One of the phrases I hate the most is that everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. I feel like this phrase is used to guilt people for not doing as much as everyone else. And the truth is, while we may all have 24 hours in a day, sure, some of us have a lot more responsibility than other people do. And some of us have more privileges than other people do. If I have the same 24 hours in a day as you, but I have childcare than I can afford, then I'm gonna have a little more time to do other things than someone who doesn't. But basically, time is of the essence, as they say, and the truth is that once you've adopted, you're not gonna have as much time. Hey there, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Katie, and I share a lot of videos here about how to adopt from foster care, and I give a lot of adoption tips and tricks. And I'm also an adoption consultant, and I work with families from all across the country who are interested in adopting from foster care. And I'm guessing if you're watching this, you are somewhat interested in adopting from foster care. And so I actually want to let you know before I get started in the video that I have a free resource for you. If you have been thinking about adoption for a while, but you're not like 100% sure you're really ready for it, I have a free quiz that you can download that will help you assess how ready you are to actually begin this adoption process. So definitely check that out in the link below. And I hope that if you enjoy this video today, you'll consider subscribing so we can hang out more. Okay, so I think anyone who becomes a parent is just going to have less time on their hands. If you've had a baby before, you know what I'm talking about. Your kid needs you all the time. You're carrying them around. I've heard a lot of my friends who've had babies say they just feel like milk machines, basically. There's just not as much time available to just be or to do things that you really want to get done. That's just parenting, right? And with adoption, we sometimes skip this infant phase. We don't have that infant phase where they're having to rely on us for every single need they have. And so it can be easy to think like, oh, I might have a lot more time. Wrong. The truth is that when you adopt from foster care, there's a whole different set of expectations on you, and your kids have different needs than a typical kid. And all of these things take up a lot of time. So what does life look like on a really practical basis, just in how much time you have and how many things you have to do when you've adopted? So the first thing that you need to be aware of is that if you are adopting from foster care, there's typically a 3 to 6 month fostering period before you can officially adopt your child. Now, this is only if you're adopting a waiting child. Obviously, if you're doing foster care, the goal is reunification. So this doesn't apply in that situation. I'm talking about kids who are already legally free for adoption. They're placed in your family. You will have 3 to 6 months where they are in your home, and you will have to have regular social worker visits. In our case, we had to have 1 a week for the first 6 weeks of the placement, and then after that, 1 a month with our worker, but also 1 a month with the children's social worker. And occasionally, sometimes you might have a guardian ad litem as well, who may want to come and do other visits. So there are a lot of people who are going to be coming to your home and visiting. And the truth is, it takes a lot of time and mental energy to organize all of those meetings and make sure that you have time in your schedule and you know when people are coming. And so that can be a little bit more on your mental load as a parent when you adopt. And another thing is that, at least in our case and the case of many other adoptive families I know, when the social workers come to visit, it can be a really great thing in the sense that if you have a great social worker, they're such a good resource. Like, I remember when our worker came, I would let her know things that I was struggling with or just some behaviors I was seeing. And because she was really experienced, she gave us some great advice. And honestly, it was advice that I don't think I could have gotten from other people who hadn't adopted before or weren't kind of in this world. So while it was a great thing, there were also negative things about caseworkers visiting our home. And the biggest thing is that it can be really triggering to your child when caseworkers come and visit. It can remind your children of when they were first brought into care. It could remind your children of their previous foster placement that maybe they're missing. And even if they've started to feel a little more comfortable and confident that you're going to be their forever family, seeing a caseworker can kind of trigger these alarm bells in them saying, wait a second, last time I saw caseworkers, I moved and they moved me somewhere new. And so totally understandable why our kids may feel a little bit triggered by that, but we would often find that what that means is the visit could be really stressful, but afterwards, It takes the kids a long time to kind of come back off of that and regulate again. And on those nights, like, forget making dinner, it's pizza night. Like, you just don't have time to deal with all the emotions, getting someone in your home, talking with them, and getting dinner and doing homework. There's just a lot going on. The second thing that is really difficult with schedule-wise when you have adopted children is all the doctor's appointments or therapist appointments or other types of therapies your child may need. Now, I know going to the doctor, if you have kids in any way, adoption or not, it can be a lot when your kids get sick. But when you are adopting from foster care, your children oftentimes have health insurance that not everyone accepts. So I know when I first adopted our children, or they first moved in with us, I had to call around, I think, to like 11 or 12 different doctor's offices before I could find one that was accepting patients with their insurance, which honestly just made me mad, because I'm like, it's not these kids' fault that this is the insurance they have. They're not allowed to be on my insurance yet. But, you know, it was also frustrating because it took a lot of time. And when these kids first move in, you have to take them to all these different appointments within a certain amount of time. You have to make sure you're keeping up to date on everything, and the social workers are checking in on that. And so it can just add a lot more to your plate and to your schedule. And you may find with therapist appointments, it can be really hard to find a therapist, first of all, or you may have to switch therapists sometimes if it's not working well, and all that stuff takes time. I have found that therapists don't tend to set, at least around us, they don't tend to set a, like, we're meeting every week at this time on this day. It was like every time I had to schedule the next one, it was like random. And so it was really hard to balance all of the time and our schedules around that. Another way that adoption will affect your time and your schedule is that you may have a lot of meetings at school. If you have a school-age child, they may be having certain behavioral or emotional things going on as they transition into a new school, and they're going through a lot of separation and just newness all around. And it's also possible that you will be having meetings at school about academic needs, because in some situations you will find that you need to begin advocating for your child to be put on an IEP, which is an individualized educational plan, if you don't know, or a 504 plan. And so you may have to meet with the school to advocate for your child and set up those appointments and have them tested so that they can get the help they need in school. And if you don't get that right away, you may find that you are spending a lot of time on homework with them every night, a lot of extra time having to help them with things. Maybe you'll have to schedule a tutor to come. All of these things really take a big effect on your schedule. And I would say the last big way that adopting kids will affect the time you have available is that even when you are home, it's really hard to have downtime unless you are super intentional about it. In most situations, if you have a biological child, by the time they're like a preteen or a teenager, they're gonna like, I'm too cool for mom and dad. I don't wanna spend time with them. I wanna talk to my friends. I wanna watch my TV shows, whatever. But when you adopt, that's often not the case, because your child's emotional age may be a lot younger just because of everything they've been through. And so it's really common that you could adopt like a 7-year-old who acts more like a 4-year-old when it comes to emotionally. They want the love and care and attention a 4-year-old would need. And so because of this, you definitely, so you may find that, you know, when you were that age, you may not have really wanted to hang out with your parents, or you could have entertained yourself a lot better, or played with a sibling, or played with a friend next door. Whereas if you adopt children, you may find that they need and want a lot of time with you, because they need to be building that connection with you and that trust that isn't just magically there just because you've adopted them. That has to build over time on both ends. You have to build that bond with them, they have to build that bond with you. And it does take time. So even when you have older kids who are more capable of things like showering themselves and getting themselves breakfast, which, to be fair, is amazing. I love having older kids for those reasons. It is just one less thing to worry about. But you may find that emotionally they still need a lot from you. And that can be pretty time consuming to make sure you're giving them all the attention that they need. I talked about this in my last video, but a lot of kids who have experienced trauma will have what I like to call leaky bucket syndrome. And I explained it in the last video as this. Imagine if you have a bucket with no holes. you spend some time filling it up and it's full. It's gonna stay full for a while. But if you're filling up a bucket that has a lot of little holes in it, that water is gonna be seeping out as you're pouring it in. And so you may spend a long time pouring in and you'll think, okay, it's gonna be good for now. But then before you know it, the bucket's empty again. Well, that's what it's like with our kids and their kind of like love tank. Is if they've experienced trauma and loss and they don't always trust that they're gonna get that love again, then they have that leaky bucket syndrome. You can pour in time, you can pour in love, you can pour in attention, and it feels like it's gone like that. They're not happy, they want more, and it feels like nothing you do is ever enough. Because the truth is, you could leave that hose running into that bucket all day, and it's still gonna be empty. It's still gonna be emptying out constantly. And unfortunately, that's just how it is for a while. Because of this, your kids are gonna want to be around you all the time. They're gonna want your undivided attention. And the truth is, we can't always give undivided attention all the time. You have tasks to do. If you're a mom or dad, you have more than just parenting going on. You may have a job. You have to help keep your house clean. You have to make sure your kids get to school on time. There's so many things. You have to take care of your yard. I don't even know. Repairs, all those things have to be done. And you can't just sit and spend time staring into your child's eyes all day long, as much as they want that. And so what you'll find is it's just a lot harder to get any time alone, let alone, it's hard enough to get time to do the tasks you have to do, but because your kids have that leaky bucket syndrome, it's even harder because they still want more from you. And if you don't even have time to do your household tasks, I mean, forget doing anything fun or relaxing for yourself. So unless you're really intentional about setting aside that time for yourself, then it can be pretty difficult. And that's where that whole, we have the same 24 hours in a day thing just doesn't cut it. I just hate that phrase. I can't say it enough. So as you can imagine, all of these different things that are asking for your time when it comes to adoptive parenting, whether it's social worker visits, doctor's appointments, therapist appointments, your kids' emotional needs, all of those things are constantly pulling at you and you need to spend time on them. So because of that, you have less time to pursue a hobby. You have less time to spend with your friends. You have less time to spend with your spouse. You also, if you're like me, you may start getting less sleep because as an introvert, if I don't get my alone time during the day, I will stay up late to get it. I will stay up way too late to get it. I did it last night. Or you might wake up really early to get it because we need that a little bit of alone time where we can get something done or focus or just relax. And so then you can be really sleepy. You may also just feel like completely touched out. Like if you're not a really touchy person, your kids are hanging on you all the time, you can just be like, I need some time by myself. And here's the thing. I think it's really important to think through the ways that adoption will affect these practical things like how you spend your time, because that really affects your life. It affects you emotionally. It affects you relationally. And the past couple weeks on this channel, I've been sharing how adoption will affect your mental health. Well, that's part of it, is how much time you're spending, how adoption will affect your friendships, how adoption will affect your marriage. All of that kind of feeds into this idea of how much time adoption takes. So there are some ways to combat this. I'm not going to go into a huge list here, but I do want to share at least a couple things that have worked for us. So I have 3 ways that you can combat this feeling like all your time is being sucked away. So the first one is called quiet time. And quiet time is your best friend. I'm sure you've heard of it before. You know what? Your kids might not like it at first, but it's setting aside a time in a day, even if it's 20 to 30 minutes, where your kids are going to be in their rooms playing. Now, obviously, if you have a super young kid, you may not be able to do this, but if it's safe, you can do this. When our daughter was really young, we would have like book time in her crib, and so we'd give her books, and she would stay in there and read a little bit after her nap. It was a nice way to kind of wake herself up, and that has been great. We still use that even though they're older. In the summers, it's amazing, so that they can get a little bit of time just to calm down. They can play in their room, and it shows them that it's okay to spend time away from us and we still love you and we're still going to come back together later. So a lot of good things come from that. The second thing that could help is finding reliable babysitters. Even if you can only do it occasionally, I think it's so good to have like a roster of babysitters you can trust. And even if it's expensive to pay them, like it is worth it to use occasionally if you can. And the third one is to find other people to help fill your child's leaky bucket. The truth is, you can't save your child. You can't fix what your child has been through, even by spending time with them. They need more, and they honestly need more than you're able to give. And so that's where they say it takes a village to raise a child. And I feel like a lot of us don't really have a village, but if there's anyone in your life who could mentor your child or spend time with them that you really trust, that can go a long way. So when our oldest first moved in, we had a church friend who wanted to invite some of the 4th and 5th grade girls over, and they would go on little hikes together and they would read the Bible together and pray. And that was a huge benefit for our daughter because she wanted a lot of attention and love. Like, obviously, kids want that. And so that friend was able to pour into her when I was feeling depleted. And she would take her sometimes just on her own, and they'd go on a little hike together, a little walk. And it was so great because our daughter loved it. It gave us a little bit of a reprieve, and everyone was happy. There was also a college student that was in our small group from church, and she would take my oldest daughter out and they'd go on little dates, or she would take her to, go to Ulta and go shopping, or they'd go out to lunch together and they would talk about things that maybe my daughter wouldn't want to talk about with me, but coming from a college student, it's cool. So all of those people were so helpful in pouring into our kids in ways that we may have felt we couldn't do at the time, especially having 3 of them who all need us in all these different ways. So there's a couple tips. Hopefully that will help you. But like I said, if you have not downloaded this quiz to see if you're truly ready to adopt, these practical things are important. And the quiz addresses some practical stuff and also some of that emotional stuff that goes along with adopting. So definitely check that out. Also, I have a really exciting announcement coming up very soon, so keep your eyes peeled in the next few videos because I have a new program coming out that is going to address all of these things. If you are beginning the adoption process and you're worried, you're not sure how you're gonna handle it, I've got you. Anyway, that's all for this week. If you enjoyed the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. It helps more families who want to adopt find my videos. I hope you are having an awesome week, and I'll see you next time.